Can you hear it? Can you hear? Okay, great. We're calling our special meeting in the Capital Area Road and Bridge District to order. We'll do a brief roll call. President Urso.
Here.
President Berthelot.
Present.
Secretary Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Rayford.
Here.
And myself. We have a quorum. You should have received the minutes of the meeting held on March 28th, our last meeting for the first quarter of 2022. Hopefully you've had time to review them. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion to approve. Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any objections? The minutes stand approved. We'll go right into the presentation by DOTD and Atlas Technical Consultants. So, Kara, Paul, if you would, walk us through the presentation. I believe it'll be on the screens above. Again, I thank everyone for the short notice and your ability to be here today. We received word that the information was available to narrow the scope of the sites, and so we wanted to be sure we were true to our word and get that information out before the end of May. So proceed, introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Kara Morey. I'm the overall project manager for Atlas Technical Consultants.
My name is Paul Vaught. I'm the DOTD project manager for this project.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Can I move this computer a little bit? Unplug it. Oh. Yeah. Okay, so just starting off, we always have our, introductory slides. This is our project team. Again, I'm Kara from Atlas Technical Consultants, and this is the rest of our pretty large team. We do have a few of them here in the audience today, and if any of you came to our public meetings, you probably met several of our team members around the rooms. Let's see. Obviously, our ultimate objective is constructing a new crossing of the Mississippi River in the greater Baton Rouge area. We have two parts to our project. Part one, which we are on the very end of now, is called enhanced planning. And then the goal is to go directly into part two, which would be the environmental evaluation. And that has a timeline of approximately 2 years. Our study area, it has stayed the same throughout, from the very first time that I've come to talk to you. It's a very large study area starting at I-10, the Horace Wilkinson Bridge in Baton Rouge, goes down about 62 river miles to the Sunshine Bridge near Donaldsonville, and we're connecting anywhere on the west bank or on LA1 and over to the east bank somewhere on LA30. This is our project workflow again for that part one, enhanced planning. I'm happy to say that we now have almost all green boxes across the page. We've showed you progression up to this point. Last time we were here, we were basically right where this arrow is, where the mouse is showing, gearing up for our public meetings. We've since then had those, and that's what we're here today. I know everybody's probably eager. I am going to make you wait till the end, for the big reveal, but we'll walk through just a little bit more of the process. A quick recap of how we've gotten to today. We did start out with 32 preliminary alternatives, so we put those through a first round of screening, avoiding things such as highly sensitive resources. We incorporated some traffic travel demand information and incorporated things such as technical bridge design considerations. We were able to eliminate 12 of those 32, bringing us down to 20. That's kind of where we were right before Christmas time, whenever we met in December of last year. After that, we went straight into a series of stakeholder engagement meetings with the river pilots. We met with Deep Draft, Shallow Draft. We met with the Corps of Engineers, levee districts. We had a lot of good feedback from those guys, kind of really walking them through each bridge alignment and where the piers were in the water. And from that, we were able to cut that number 20 down in half to 10. That's kind of where we were last time at the end of March when we met with you. We showed you those 10, and that is what we went to the public with to get feedback on. Again, that's where I'm going to reveal the results today of our round 2 screening. And that's hopefully, taking us down to, not hopefully, it is taking us down to 3 alternatives that will move forward into the NEPA analysis. these are some of the things that we, you know, again, I stressed last time we were here, we have this table with all the data. We've been very data driven up until this point. We looked at things on that screening table, such as 2 types of traffic information: average daily traffic, vehicle hours traveled. We looked at property impacts, you know, right-of-way, utilities, DEQ permitted facilities. We did have estimated construction costs and estimated toll revenues on that table, as well as some environmental and social type impacts with protected species, wetlands, things of that nature. This is the actual exhibit that we had at our public meeting. This is our data table for round 2. You know, there's a lot of information here. The red, yellow, green, red being the least amount of benefit, green being the most. And one thing we stressed at the meetings is that these were all compared to each other. So they're all relative to each of the 10 alternatives. And if you want to look at this, we do have, oh yeah, yes ma'am. We do have all of our public meeting materials and exhibits on our website at mrbsouth.com. So, you know, basically that's what we showed, went to the public with. We had lots of other exhibits. Since then, we've had, or throughout the process, not just with public meetings, but we've had several meetings with elected officials, all of the parish administrations of the 4-parish area. We met with the office of Congressman Graves and then various other members of the Louisiana legislature over the last several months. We also had individual stakeholders, groups. We met a couple times with the crisis group, the Baton Rouge Area Chamber, the Greater Baton Rouge Industry Alliance, the Motor Transport Association. We did meet with specific representatives from industry, as well as specific representatives from known private developments that our alternatives might be, you know, kind of coming near. So again, last time we met, we were almost ready to have our public meetings, and we did. We had 6 open house style public meetings. We started it off on Monday, April 25th in East Baton Rouge, and then went over to the St. Gabriel Community Center, then went over to the West Bank and the Addis Community Center in West Baton Rouge Parish. The next one was in Donaldsonville and Ascension, and then again on that Monday we were over at the Lamar Dixon Center in Gonzales, and then we ended up wrapping up in Plaquemine at the Civic Center. And Plaquemine did have the highest attendance at 353 attendees, you know, with East Baton Rouge kind of coming in second there. But overall, this was a very great attendance. We had almost 1,200 people physically show up to the series of meetings. That's a really great attendance number for any kind of meeting. And this 1198 number total does not include, that's strictly just the public and elected officials. That number does not include our whole project team, as well as DOTD staff, or our news and media. So that's pretty good either way. Let's see. You know, we had several different ways that you could comment at those public meetings. You know, we had the regular old-fashioned comment form that you could fill out and hand to us at the meetings, or you could email it in. We did have a large online engagement component. We had a map-based virtual mechanism. The software is called Maptionary. You know, it was really interactive. You could kind of click through the screens. There were about 6 screens. You could tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, where you live, where you traveled to, if you knew of sensitive things in the area. We actually got some pretty good feedback from that. Just, you know, there were some like family cemeteries that people told us about, you know, that we may need to avoid, things that just wouldn't show up on a public database. We got a lot of good information there. And again, another note that everything's on this is our project website, and all those public meeting materials can be found there. Let's see. So kind of statistics on the comments that we got. The public input period, it started on April 25th. And the meetings lasted until May 3rd, but we kept that public comment period open until May 14th. So you could either, you know, try to digest everything at the meetings, or you could go home, kind of look at the website, and really think about what you wanted to say there. So overall, we got outstanding comments, you know, received. You know, as much attendance we got that much more on the comment side. We had 257 comment forms, which this is a snapshot of our actual form that we had. We had 69 emails sent in, 30 voicemail messages. We did have a phone line that you could call and leave a voicemail on. And then we had 1,876 of those Maptionaire online surveys filled out. There were more that people kind of started and didn't finish it for whatever reason, but these are the ones that were actually completed and submitted. So overall, over 2,000 comments there that we did receive over the course of that 2-week period, basically. Let's see. So these are just some of the statistics of if someone did complete that survey form or the comment form and they did put a preference of the likes or dislikes. This is basically showing you the red bar to the left are the dislikes, the number of dislikes we received. The green bar to the right for each alternative are the number of likes received. And the yellow is just the difference between the two. So if you had a longer red bar on this side, you obviously have more dislikes there, and that's what the yellow's capturing. So walking you down, it was very split, but I thought this was pretty telling of kind of ranking the alternatives from north to south. So this is getting into our table, and another big question that we've gotten asked repeatedly is all of the criteria on the table weighted the same? Will it be weighted the same? And at the time, we had just data, facts to show everybody, and at the time they were all kind of weighted the same. And what we were telling everyone, and it was very truthful, was we don't have that public involvement column to add to that table yet. So that's where we were. That column has been added. You saw the number of comments that we got. Something I didn't mention was we got about 1,000 of the comments during the actual time of the public meetings, and then we got another 1,000 after the meetings ended and in between that May 14th timeline. So half and half. Just people coming to the meetings, and the other half. So they kept active with sending their comments in. So this is kind of part of our big reveal today. This is our table that we've used to rank the alternatives. Not every column on the original big table did get carried through to this particular table, and there's various reasons for that. Starting out, we had a mileage column just comparing the mileage of each alternative. We didn't feel like that added a whole lot of value because there wasn't a whole lot of difference in between each alternative mileage-wise. We decided to group them basically into three buckets, is what we're calling it. So the blue bucket right here, the blue columns are basically our traffic data. We have our average daily traffic, and we have our change in area-wide total vehicle hours traveled, so VHT. So together, those two weighting factor percentages make up 1/3 of the whole table, so 33% here. Moving over to the right in the yellow bucket here, these are more of our environmental aspects of the table and social impacts, things that we would maybe have some issues with permitting, not really issues, but they might have a little bit more hurdles to jump through when it comes to permitting wise. So together these four make up 34% of the table. And then for, with the overwhelming public response that we got, we felt like that was a pretty big factor that needed to be contributed to this table. And there are people who say, oh, my comments don't matter, nobody reads that. I promise you we read all of them. And it was a big effort, a big lift to try for our public involvement team to actually start going through and categorizing and get that data ready so that we could kind of come to you guys sooner rather than later with our results. So again, in this project, you can see it right here in the numbers. The public and stakeholder outreach represents a whole third of this table at 33%. The traffic data, that blue bucket, that's more addressing our purpose and need. Environmental, again, addressing permitting issues. The things that didn't make it forward on this table were, the things like the structure impacts. Those are things that we can probably try to avoid in design or work around and mitigate. So there wasn't a good way to weight those types of things, so they didn't get carried forward here. So everybody ready? I couldn't help myself, sorry. Getting into this is our, big reveal. These are our round 2 screening results with everything that we've shown you today. I know it might be a little hard to see, but just walking you through, similar to our public meeting table that we had, we kind of used the same type of assigning values to each of the alternatives for each column. We used the 1, 2, and 3, 1 being most beneficial, 2 being moderate benefit, and 3 being least beneficial. We did have bar charts that helped us to kind of categorize and assign that 1, 2, 3 value, and then with that being applied to the percentage weight factor here, I'll draw your attention over to the right, which is the weighted average. This is kind of the results column right here. A lower score here is actually better. So the alternative that came in first place, so the 3 that are highlighted in purple obviously are the 3 that will be moving forward. They scored the best on this table. E11-4 scored the highest with 1.29, and then the next 2 were tied to kind of in second place here was F13 Roman numeral 4 and F14 Roman numeral 5. All 3 of these alternatives are in Iberville Parish. The one that scored next highest was the C63, which is the one that begins in West Baton Rouge starting near Dow and kind of comes over and ties into LA30 at Bluebonnet. So that one came in, you know, I guess 4th if you don't really count the tie right here. So any questions? And I will walk you through some maps kind of showing you where each of these alternatives are found. But I can, any questions so far?
Sure. We had talked about the weighted impact on the I-10 bridge, that we was going to reduce the traffic. I don't really see it in here, unless I'm missing it. And if I am, show it to me, please.
So we did have a column that looked like the VHT column on here, which was the area-wide impacts. We did, at the public meetings, we did have a column that showed I-10 benefit. We felt like it was included in the area-wide, so in order to rank them, we didn't want to count it twice. So that is kind of represented in the area-wide column here, but I'll take you back real quick. This column, these columns right here were the impacts to I-10 in particular. So, you know, the 3 calling attention, E11-4 definitely, you know, was green and yellow in there. F13 and F14-5, they had green and yellow benefits to specifically for I-10. But we felt like it was captured in the area-wide, the whole network-wide vehicle hours traveled. So this, you know, if no one, I'm pretty sure everyone in this room has probably seen some sort of version of this map. If you haven't, I mean, it would be a surprise to me. But, you know, this is kind of our overall map showing those 10 alternatives that we did go to the public with. And the red means they've been eliminated. And these are the ones, the 3 that are moving forward. And then so, you know, just showing you, zooming in on just the 3 that are remaining, and we'll move forward. I have a few little statistics for each one. You know, since these are the ones that will be getting detailed studies moving into the NEPA process. E11, starting with the northernmost one, E11 Roman numeral 4 right here. E is just south of Plaquemine. It ties in kind of right near Old Evergreen Road and coming up and over across the river right here at River Mile 206. And then kind of goes over to the right, tying into LA30, right south of the Iberville East Baton Rouge Parish line. It is about a little over 2 miles south of where LA30 and Bluebonnet ties in. Bluebonnet's a little to the north right here. And there's like a little Anytime Fitness strip mall and a little residential neighborhood street called Lori Lane right here. Moving down to the F, there was a third F alternative. It was F12. That one was eliminated due to the weighting scores. The 2 that remain, between the difference between E and F, it's about 1.25 miles of difference here. F ties in right before the Shintech main access road. This is the Shintech main access road. This is Shintech. This is Westlake. So F is starting here, coming up and over. They kind of come around S&F Flopam right here, and they split off into 2. So the difference between these 2 or where the river crossing is just roughly about .7 river miles right here. The bridge span layouts themselves are very similar here, and again, these were vetted by the river pilots and anybody basically with navigations stakeholders type folks right here. F13 actually comes up and over, ties in at the same endpoint as E11 does, and then F14 does have a different river crossing and a different endpoint, ending at Roman numeral 5. It's coming in across the river right here. This is Bayou Paul Lane, and this is the Willa Glen plant. And Roman numeral 5 basically ties into LA 30 at, I think it's Garden Simon LeBlanc Drive. The community center is right here, the St. Gabriel Community Center, and that MSA Academy. So let's see. And then anything to add?
I was just going to say, I think one thing that's important to remember when we're looking at these lines, these are lines representative corridors. So the exact specific alignment, the exact specific tie-in location, is subject to adjustment based on what we find as we move forward with these studies. It's really trying to clear a corridor, to evaluate a corridor for impacts, and to figure out how we can mitigate as many impacts as possible as we move through that area.
And we'll touch on that a little bit more in some of the next slides. But, these are the three that will be moving forward after today. So this chart is just something that CARB-D asked us to show. It's kind of our same roll-up schedule that we've had throughout the whole process. We have been able to stay on. We're actually delivering this a little bit ahead of schedule, which is very good to report. We're about 94% work completed for that Part 1 enhanced planning, and the same amount of time elapsed. So looking ahead, concurrently, what we'll be doing is finalizing that enhanced planning final report. While we're doing that, we will be proceeding, starting conversations with detailed scoping and contracting for the next phase, which is Part 2 environmental. We'll begin refining the traffic and revenue analysis that we have, developing some conceptual line work, which that line and grade, we'll actually put a line and grade study to each of these three alignments and begin to perform some of the environmental field work, the more boots on the ground type studies, the wetland delineations, the phase 1 environmental site assessments, the cultural resource surveys, things of that nature. That's where we'll get down into the nitty gritty of each of the three, and we'll be able to see, are there things that might need to be tweaked, or, we'll continue stakeholder engagement throughout that process as well. So ultimate goal is completing the NEPA process, which is the next part to the contract. And we'll be trying to narrow those three down to one preferred alternative. The main goal there is obtaining a federal highway approved decision document, which we would anticipate by summer of 2024. So that's the end. No comments. Everyone's quiet.
We can have more public hearings.
Yes,
during that
sir.
process?
Yeah, there will be, a series of a whole nother round of public involvement and public engagement there.
Okay.
I would like to thank you and your group for whatever you did with all this to make the final decision. I certainly understand that it's been a hard effort in the public hearings and the stuff that your group put up with at the public hearings, and I want to tell my members up here, I had no idea that any one of these three were going to be in my parish. I thought probably two and not all three, so I am surprised. You have been working with our local industry here in our parish, the Dow Chemicals, the Shintex, the Westlake, and everyone likes the effort towards Evergreen Road. And I'm dealing with $6 billion worth of industry potential coming into our parish at this time that I'm dealing with the state of Louisiana. And I'm really thankful and grateful that our industry over here that would be subject to some of this growth over here that have come together And I'm looking forward, and my preference as the future goes on, as the numbers reflect, that the Evergreen site would probably be the preferable site here in our parish for our industry growth on that west side. So again, I want to thank you and your team for all your effort. I want to thank Senator Ward for his efforts putting CARB together, and the chairman, Mr. Campbell, and my cohorts here. And thank you, and it's about time that Iberville gets to take a look that we have been an industrial driving force here in the for the state of Louisiana for industrial growth, and I would say that we would probably over the last 10, 15 years rank in the top 4 or 5, and we have been an economic drive engine for this state, and it's about time that we get something in return from the state, as I have always welcomed industry into our state, and we should get something in return for this. And I'm ecstatic that we're going to have an opportunity for 3 locations, so thank you again, and I want to thank my members here.
Do we have any further questions? I'll have a few in a minute. Secretary Wilson?
I don't have any questions. I just want to acknowledge the professional work that the team has done, both the consultant team as well as the DOT team, because not only does this require a great deal of preparation on the front end, it requires a lot of time in terms of the public engagement. Dr. Calavoda, the Deputy Secretary, and myself were at the meetings, as well as many of the team members who were at all of the meetings. Eric and I played a little tag team, and we saw many of you all at these meetings as well. But what you don't get a chance to see, and this is really for the public, is the digestion and the processing of this data and this information, and the number of meetings that we've had internally with our federal partners, with our other stakeholders that are essential to this to make the kinds of decisions that we make. And I think this does not indicate the end of the process. It indicates the advancing of the process, and the fact that we are on schedule, as we have committed to the public, that what we started doing a little over 2 years ago is indicative of where we are today, and have no doubt that the team will get it done in a year, right? No. Mike died. No, it's not going to be a year, but we will continue this process with the same professionalism and efficiency and respect of the process, to make sure that at the end of the day, the process, we have one that is going to be acceptable to our federal partners. And then the other piece is to publicly acknowledge the governor, of course, and the legislature for the funding that's been put forth on the project that gives it the momentum that it absolutely needs to finish this process and have room to grow, both in terms of one-time money, but also in terms of recurring revenue that's going to be available for this project that's going through the legislative process now. So this is, I think, the first time that we've seen some of these mega projects that have been in the works move at this speed and with this level of certainty and content. So I just wanted to acknowledge the staff and our consultant team for the work that they've done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I just want to make a couple comments. Number one, there's no question we need a bridge, another bridge. A little surprised by the detailed information about where it is, but that's okay with me, because we do need another bridge. I mean, that's a fact. I would also say that I know that Atlas team and DOTD are probably tired of hearing from me, because I wore them out. I mean, I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of issues that I wanted to try to get clarified, and they did a fantastic job of responding to the issues, and including setting up a meeting with my mayor to make sure she knew every little detail that I had involved in that process. And, you know, my biggest concern was, which I actually got the chance to see, was the public comment. You know, it is imperative that we have the public get their input into the projects that we see, good or bad. It still matters on how we look at those issues. And from day one, when we started looking at this, I've indicated I wanted to wait until we see what the public comment is and to address what our future plans are. As the numbers show, I think it's pretty reflective. I know I went to 3 of the meetings, and I was very impressed about the attitude that the people had. Some were a little different than others, let's say that, but you know what? It was important to them to be there, and they were. And I just think that's a plus of us moving in the right direction and trying to address our traffic needs in our parish, not only for today, but also for the future. So I just want to, and I want to thank Secretary Wilson too, because he got a few calls from me too, and sometimes he didn't answer, but that was okay, But and he probably knew why, But I wanted to say that I think this is the process that we should follow. Yeah, am I happy about what the results are? There's plus and minuses to every issue that we're going to deal with, but I think all in all, and I know Parish President Uso, he made a good comment. How about helping me in my parish? And you know what? This is part of that process that we go and try to make things work. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
You want final? Yeah, I had at least one of these on my chart as well, and I've always said I would support the data. In the data, it finally is shown to us in a complete form, and so I congratulate President Uso, and I hope he does bring the traffic, a little bit further south. Get it off the I-10 bridge. I think we're gonna have some problems, like Fred said, some pluses and some minuses. I think the city of Plaquemine is gonna be a big issue in the future, and I don't know how we're gonna address that, but somewhere down the road, I think that's gonna have to be addressed, the route through the city of Plaquemine. But having said that, I support your findings, and thank you. Congratulations, Uso.
I will say the three that have been recommended, they do have the best improvements to LA1 itself. So, that should bring some relief.
Just for clarity's purposes, the ones that have all three selections are south of the city of Plaquemine, which means Highway 1 would have to be conformed sufficiently to flow traffic through the city of Plaquemine. So I think that's going to be critically important. And obviously that is the connector of Highway 1 to Highway 30. That was the scope of our district in the first place. And the traffic counts seem to indicate that there's some parity with all of the 10 that you looked at on the traffic counts, or is that the tolls? Is it just the tolls or the traffic counts?
What's shown in that chart is the traffic counts. One of the earlier screenings that we performed was to remove some of the routes that performed more poorly relative to attracting traffic to the bridge location. So yes, the range on the daily traffic on each of these alternatives was a lot closer because we had already removed some of the more poorly performing alternatives.
Okay, so truthfully then it's a traffic count as opposed to a toll revenue issue or a toll usage issue. It's a true traffic count.
That's correct. And if you notice the final decision matrix that was used to score the different alternatives, the toll revenue generation, and in fact the cost of the structure was not included in that decision-making process.
Because based on the scoring, I would agree with President Urso. The E11 appears to be the absolute better in terms of cost, flow, distance, ease, using all the matrix, because it did rate higher than the other two. Not significantly, but more significantly on the vital factors as opposed to public comment. The next question I have is, given the work that has been done already, and I realize that there's more work to be done now that it's three, for the public particularly, what is that work and why can it not be done in 12 months as opposed to 24? Does the government say it has to be 24 months? Or can this literally be done in 12 months? You're now dealing with three locations, two of which are at the same point of drop-off or entrance. I mean, if I were a member of the public sitting out there, which I am, I have that question. Why can it not be done sooner?
So
Great question.
Oh, I want you to talk, okay.
So I would, I jokingly said 12 months, but remember, we just validated the process and said it worked, and it took 2 years to narrow this. You're going to get to a level of granularity and detail on each of these corridors that it is not going to be possible to do the due diligence, to run the traffic models, to make the assessments, to get the public input, to value and digest that in a 12-month window. And so I would just encourage the public, not because the feds say you have to do 12 months, but the federal rules say it's not to exceed those 2 years. There could be the potential of getting it in 18 months, 20 months, 22 months. It really depends on the process and the information that we extract from what we assess to tell us when we get to that point to be able to justify it. Because then you have to write all of this, and you do not want to go down a path that puts you in a situation that the federal document doesn't get approved, or it gets challenged in court, that you're sitting and standing and waiting for that process to end before you can advance. And so, the 2-year window is an aggressive window. It's something that we believe is achievable. But we're going to have to do our due diligence, and that's why it takes that approximate window, because there's information we do not know just yet. To be able to go in and get the documentation from a cultural resources standpoint, an environmental standpoint, an environmental justice standpoint, from a design and technical standpoint, it does take time. And this entire team has been engaged in the work, but it's important to note that they are going as fast as they can, but maintaining the level of quality and integrity in the process that they can. So the 2 years is an absolute latest window. It can go sooner, but to go any faster to try and get this done in a year, I think you put the project at more risk than doing the due diligence that's necessary.
So at this time, based on your analysis, we've done 94% of the work of phase one in 94% of the elapsed time, but we've only spent 61% of the disbursement that we had available to us, which is a positive. So, but the delay or the time frame going forward is not dependent upon the receipt of any further funding.
So, as I've committed before, this process is fully funded from an environmental standpoint to get through the end of that record of decision, which is necessary. So while we've only spent 61%, the contract was set up such that we would use 2 years, and if we performed well, we advanced the next 2 years. If we didn't perform well, we could cut bait and go fish somewhere else. Obviously, the team has done an exceptional job staying on track, managing its revenue, and that has a lot to do with their relationship with the department. But this is fully funded. The $300 million that's in play, 100% of that will be spent after we finish this environmental process and not before, until we have that final decision and that final alternative. So like many of the mega projects that we've advanced in this administration, we have money waiting on the process that reduces the time between an environmental decision and advancing the project to the next phase. That is the benefit of having money now. We fully intend to ask for additional money from the federal government, one, because we've demonstrated this process, and that this process is fully funded. We're looking to add more to that $300 million to be able to bring down the overall cost and have certainty in the delivery of this project. So day one in 2024, when this is resolved, we can move directly into the delivery stage, buying right away, moving utilities, and actually constructing the project.
Then I guess the last question I would have is, as you look at the city of Plaquemine and having to go through the city of Plaquemine, this is a highway. It's already going through the city, but now if you're going to enhance traffic significantly to the tune of 20,000 or whatever the number happens to be, what's the plan there as it relates to that? That's now becoming a vital connector to this bridge. Before you even build the connector from one, off of one, it's one has to be significantly improved for traffic flow.
So you speak to why that 2-year window is not something you can go very fast with, because those are implications that we have to factor in for the construction and the delivery of this. Much like on other projects, we build and design and modify our system to accommodate it based on the need to deliver it. So if you're looking at a 4 to 5 year window from when we have a record of decision to a constructed bridge, that gives you a 6 to 7 year window to be able to make those type of traffic improvements and to be able to advance those projects. And so we've always said, once we have an idea where this bridge is going to be, we can then begin to accelerate the conversations around LA1 and LA30 such that we can make those types of decisions. We're also looking at other projects outside of this one that could impact LA1, that could impact LA30, that is going to happen regardless of where this bridge was to go, but now we have a little bit more certainty of what we need to do. The other piece that you have to be mindful of is when you start talking about saying, let's improve all of LA1, whatever those improvements are, whatever we do on LA30, all of that competes with the state funding for overall infrastructure. And that's what we've always done. So we are 100% committed to making the traffic work in the region based on this document and what we've done. And that's where this process will further get refined over the next 2 years and how we can advance the LA1 or other Plaquemines Road improvements that'll be necessary, just like we'll do on LA30, that will be necessary to get folks to 10 in the most efficient and less disruptive way.
Do you have any concern that as going through this process starting now, or phase 2 starting and going forward, that any of these three or all three of them could be disqualified because of the impact it has on Plaquemine?
I don't think that they'll be disqualified because of the impact that it will have on Plaquemine. I think that is a non-starter because the nature of infrastructure is that there's dynamics that go forward and move. So the Plaquemine's traffic will not necessarily be a disqualifier for any of these based on the process that we've gone through. That being said, there are going to be improvements and other things that will need to be done to accommodate this on both sides of the river. And now that we know where we're looking at, we can begin that process and those discussions to talk about what they are. The idea behind putting this bridge and looking at it for the entire region is we don't want to concentrate all the traffic just on LA1 to be able to get to this bridge. There are other alternatives that are going to be factored into how you deal with traffic in the region and not necessarily say we're going to build one route through this area, because that will have implications all across the community. And there are implications, whether it's pipelines, whether it's utilities, whether it's railroads. There's a lot of factors that go into the traffic decisions that will tie into this bridge or infrastructure that leads to this bridge.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment on the city of Plaquemine. You worried about the traffic on the city of Plaquemine. It's the same traffic that runs through the mayor's town in Addis and Bruley and everything else. It's the same traffic. And in the morning, at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, that same traffic that we accept here from all of our surrounding parishes comes through the Plaquemine exit, through the city of Bruley, through Addis, through Plaquemine, and goes to all our industrial sites here in Iberville Parish. Then at 5 o'clock, everybody gets off in industry and they go back through Plaquemine, and they go through Addis, and they go through Bruley. Is that correct, Mr. Berthelot? Yes. Okay, I'm going to answer it for you. Yes. Okay. So with this bridge, I'm sure if this bridge is built, that those people that used to go through Plaquemine and through Addis and through Bruley will not go through the city of Plaquemine, and they'll just cross over the bridge and get to the other side of the river. Is that correct? That wouldn't, I mean, there is some math with that. Is that correct, Secretary? Thank you. Okay. No further questions.
Going the other way, Mitch.
But that same traffic that comes through Plaquemine goes through, is that right, Mayor David? Is that correct?
It stops at Dow.
It stops at, well, but the gas is heading your way north. Where's the traffic coming from? The traffic is coming from the south, headed that way, and then it gets caught up gets caught up to go to the bridge. Look, I'm satisfied. I'm not gonna argue with my cohorts. I mean, they just kind of hit me wrong with the plaquement. I mean, the same traffic and goes back. It's the same traffic.
I would just simply say, to the comments that we just heard, is that travelers are going to find the path of least resistance, and we considered all of that traffic data in the selection of the site. So I think, as much as it pains me to say President Orso is right, I will say he's he's my friend. I'm just kidding.
I'm not a traffic engineer.
And I'm not a traffic engineer either, but I trust the people.
If a bridge is built, I mean,
I trust the people.
Why would the man or the woman would not want to cross the new bridge and ride through Plaquemine? Is there something I'm missing?
I trust the people who made the decision, because all of that was factored in what led to this decision. But that being said, there will be improvements on LA1 regardless of where this bridge will go. Those improvements now are going to be factored and designed and developed consistent with the idea that there will be this bridge. And it could be something as simple as signals. It could be something as simple as turns. And so the idea that that's going to be a problem, I think, is not an issue. That's why I said it's not going to stop any of these alternatives from moving forward. There are other things that could eliminate one or two, but that's what you go through the NEPA process to do. And we again, are confident that this process has addressed all of the factors appropriately in making this decision, including public opinion.
Anything further?
My final comment, y'all have been to towns and all over Louisiana and see these little small towns with no traffic? That means no economy. We have a blistering economy here. We are blessed here in this region with a town, a community with no traffic. Then we have a dead community, and that means regional. That means regional. I want you to go up to, y'all ever been through Mangum, Louisiana? Drive up there and see the economy, no traffic. So a town with no traffic is a dying community. I love the traffic to come through Plaquemine because I have a thriving economic situation here in Iberville as we are dealing with $6 to $8 billion worth of industrial expansions on the east and west side of this river. I take these offers from LED when they deliver these clients to my office, and I hug them, and I rock them, and I make them happen in our parish. They happen, so it's time for the state to give back. It's time for the state to give, and they have give back. We got 3 possible locations. Have a great weekend, Memorial Day. Thank you.
Senator Ward, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for, I'm not technically on the committee, so I thank you for letting me make a few comments. Look, I just really want to thank everybody, each of you, because you've had the difficult task of representing your parish, but also having to wade through all that and keep the region in mind, because this has always been a regional goal. In terms of location, look, I'm just happy that we're down to the last 3. I've intentionally stayed away from conversation about where it should or shouldn't be, because my only goal has been that we get a new bridge, and where it was, that, as far as I was concerned, should have been left up and has been left up to the engineers that have worked through this process. So thank you all for all your hard work. But I look forward to seeing this continue to move forward and narrow it down. And hopefully by 2024 at the latest, we're done with the next step, and we can move forward with construction. But I think this entire group has done a phenomenal job in navigating the interest of their own parish with the interest of the region. And so thank you to all of you for volunteering your time and spending the energy and effort that it takes to put something like this together.
Thank you, Senator Ward. just some housekeeping details before we move on to in the agenda, which is very limited what's left. From a housekeeping perspective, we normally meet every quarter, and I would assume we won't meet again until the end of the third quarter, which would be in September. We would not have any further progressive information about this process until then at the earliest, I would assume.
Right.
We are mandated statutorily to meet quarterly, so we would need an update on where you are in the beginning of phase 2 by the end of September. And so we'll schedule a date during that time. Does that make sense? Is that consistent with your understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Then we will do that. We will schedule our next meeting for an update on the beginnings of phase 2, and we will continue to try and seek now information on 3 sites and whatever information you can share with us at that point. Are we required at any point to approve this selection of these 3? I don't see where we have any really any authority over that. We have to follow the process, and we accept the findings, but we don't have to approve the findings. So for the record, I do think that we ought to accept these findings as the district and then proceed with the beginnings of phase 2. Can I have a motion to do that?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion, a second. We have a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We don't have any new business. I think this was the old and the new business wrapped in together. We open it up for public comment. I've received no card, so I assume we have no public comment at this point. Oh, you do have public comment? If you'll come forward and give your full name for the record, so we'll have it.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. Kevin Durbin, West Baton Rouge Public Works. I also want to thank the committee, thank Senator Ward, and thank DOTD and the consultants for all the work they've done. My question is kind of a 2-part question, so I'll ask the first part and then wait for the answer. Number 1, is this committee locked in either financially, legally, or technically to only having 3 options to move forward into phase 2? And why would that committee be locked into only looking at those 3 options?
That's a good question, because I do not know the answer to that.
In the environmental process, it's a natural funneling of alternatives where you eliminate alternatives based on data. It doesn't make good planning or financial sense to continue to add alternatives that you have to then go back and re-vet and recompare to those that you've already determined are those 3 alternatives. And so in every environmental process I've ever seen, you've gone from 30 to 20 to 15 to 3 to a preferred alternative, and you get it approved and you advance the project. And so the value of going to 3 alternatives is you don't have to do the same level of investigation on projects that you know have other critical factors that could be eliminated or could cause that project to not be considered. So while we are not bound to this process, the process itself requires us to narrow it each phase through there. And so I guess that would be the answer to that question.
I think it's a fair question because there were 4 alternatives that were rated under 2.0. And so, and the 4th one was C63. And so the 4th one, would there be any problem with keeping a 4th in the analysis to see if anything else shakes out? That's a question. I have no...
I would say to you that when we eliminate, or when the process eliminates alternatives, they're eliminated because of factors that we know are not going to survive the process. And so whether it's constructability or it's environmental or if it's traffic or it's, whatever it is, there are factors on all of those alternatives that are not there that justified them not advancing. And so I would suggest to you that from a planning process, we would not go back and add one just because it's close. Because the reasons why it's not moving any higher is perhaps because of something that would be a major detriment to advancing it, and we would now just be creating more process and spending more effort for something we know that doesn't work. And in this business, you sometimes talk about 1/10 or 2/10 of a point to make a difference between one alternative or another. But the reasons why they were all eliminated at various stages were because of issues that were not overcomable, if that's such a word, or issues that we knew would be fatal in the process. Navigation could be one of those issues. Constructability can be one of those issues. Risks could be one of those issues. Environmental or social justice issues could be some of those issues that we eliminated them for. So adding 4 is just bringing one back into the process that we know is not going to, or has a very slim chance of advancing to complete the process.
And so I guess I just have a follow-up comment more so than a question. You know, when you look at the 3 alternatives as somebody sitting out in the public, they really kind of look like one. You know, basically there's not a lot of distance between the origin and destination points on both sides of the river, even though in the middle, yes, there is 3 alternatives in the middle. And I'm also concerned about LA1 splitting historic downtown Plaquemine. You know, I didn't grow up in Plaquemine, but I spent a lot of time down there, President Urso. You know, historic Catholic church, historic lock structures, a 2-lane bridge over Bayou Plaquemine. I think LA1 is constrained going through Plaquemine in a sense that it's not constrained going through Brusly and Addis. So when you talk about historic downtown Plaquemine, that's a little bit different than, say, in quote unquote historic downtown Brusly, historic downtown Addis, which is on different sides of LA1. LA1 doesn't split the downtown areas of Brusly and Addis. Downtown Brusly, if you will, is on the east side of LA1, downtown Addis, if you will, is on the west side of LA1. But the LA1 facility goes through historic downtown Plaquemine. And so my only concern is that if we don't carry that 4th option forward and we run into right-of-way constraints, historic preservation constraints, environmental constraints going over Bayou Plaquemine, then we spent 2 years trying to get to a final alternative that we didn't carry one forward that could have been feasible as well. So I would just encourage the committee to think about carrying that 4th alternative forward. When you look at the scores, the 1.71s, they're tied from a score perspective. You're really only carrying 2 options forward or 1 option forward versus having another option in your pocket that you could look at over the next couple of years. That's my only comment. Thank you.
I would say to that comment, Mr. Chairman, is that we're carrying 3 distinct options forward. It's not just 2, even though they're the origins and destinations may be duplicative on one side, but not the other. And again, all of this was factored into what narrowed our decision. The environmental implications, historic implications, all of that is a part of this process. And so, you know, we're following the best practice, we're doing our due diligence, and we're not overweighing anything. When you looked at that chart that showed you 33, 33, and 34% for the 3 distinct types of data that we have, all of that's been factored in. And I think you have the best 3 alternatives that you could get based on a collection of all of the data that's out there and not skewing it to one versus the other. And this is the process, and we stand by the process because of the due diligence that we put forward.
Do we have any further comments of the commissioners as it relates to that public comment? Okay. Do we have any further public comment? Well, then we thank you all for the being here today and the short notice of calling this meeting, but it was important to get this information while it was fresh and get it into the public venue. And we look forward to moving quickly through phase 2 and even making it happen before the end of 2023. With that said, happy and a safe Memorial Day weekend to all. We stand adjourned. Thank you.